The soft chime of crystal glasses rang through the candlelit living room. Everyone was smiling, gathered around the table, everyone except Pauline. Her smile trembled, fragile as glass about to shatter. On the long table draped in white lace, a 3-tiered cake gleamed among bright bouquets of flowers, and right at the center lay a neatly placed brown folder with a single sheet of paper inside. Benjamin, her only son, stood behind her, tall and broad-shouldered in a dark-fitted suit, his face calm to the point of coldness. The candlelight flickered in his eyes, and in that moment, Pauline realized that the light there no longer belonged to her son. It was something else, sharp, distant, unfamiliar. "Happy birthday, Mom," Benjamin said, his voice low and dry. He carried no gift, only pushed the folder gently toward her. The room fell silent. Pauline forced a faint, uneasy smile and reached out with trembling hands. "What's this, dear?" Benjamin met her gaze, unflinching. "Transfer papers. This house will be in my name from today." The air froze. A chill ran down Pauline's spine. She could hear her heartbeat pounding wildly, like drums echoing inside her chest. What did you just say?" she whispered hoarsely. Benjamin remained composed, his tone unwavering. "I've spoken with the lawyer. All you have to do is sign here and everything will be fine. You don't need to worry about finances anymore. I'll handle everything." The words might have sounded dutiful, but his tone so firm, so commanding, made something cold crawl through her veins. Around the table, relatives exchanged uneasy glances. A young niece blurted out softly, "Auntie, why is Uncle Benjamin making Grandma sign a paper?" Benjamin turned sharply, his eyes flashing a look so fierce it silenced the child instantly. Pauline lifted the paper with trembling hands. The bold black print read, "Deed of transfer, property ownership." Her own name was underlined in red ink, and just below it, Benjamin's name stood out final, irrevocable, like a verdict. Why are you doing this?" she stammered. Benjamin stepped closer, his voice dropping to a cold whisper, each word cutting like a blade. "Sign it, Mom. This house isn't yours anymore." The words tore through the air like a muffled roar. Pauline froze, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at the man before her, the boy who had once fit in her arms, who had once held her hand through stormy nights, now standing there as a stranger, ready to take everything from her. The room was utterly still. Only the faint crackle of candle flames broke the silence, smoke curling upward into the heavy air, mingling with her ragged, trembling breath. A birthday meant for love had turned into the quiet execution of motherhood itself. Pauline stepped back. The tiled floor beneath her seemed to slip away, and the air around her thickened until every breath hurt. Benjamin didn't move closer. He just stood there, his dark eyes hollow and gleaming with something fierce anger. Yes, but also something burning, accusing. She had never seen her son like this. Not the gentle, obedient boy he once was. Not the young man who used to kneel beside her bed, holding her hand, promising to take care of her when she grew old. The man standing before her now felt like someone else entirely, a soul possessed by something she couldn't name. Why are you doing this?" Pauline whispered, her voice trembling, fragile as glass. Benjamin pressed his lips together, speaking through clenched teeth. "Because I've waited long enough, Mom. I'm done living in your shadow. Everything you have, everything should have been mine." His words froze the entire room. A few relatives shifted uneasily, about to intervene, then quietly withdrew. No one dared to come between them. Pauline stared at her son, lips moving soundlessly. Memories flooded her mind, nights of cheap noodles shared at the kitchen table, the tiny boy who fell asleep in her arms, sweat glistening on his forehead. She had spent her whole life protecting him, only to be met now with that look of contempt. "You said, my shadow?" she choked out. I just wanted you to have a better future." Benjamin let out a dry, bitter laugh, a sound so foreign it sent a shiver down her spine. "Right. Better. But everything you did was about control, wasn't it? This house. This family name. You always said it was for me. But the truth is you never believed I was good enough, did you?" Pauline froze, each word pierced like a blade to her chest. She wanted to deny it, but stopped. Deep down, she knew he wasn't entirely wrong. She had held on too tightly, pushed too hard, forced him to follow the path she thought was right. Who could have known that love's tether would one day turn into chains of resentment? The tension was suffocating. Someone accidentally dropped a glass. The sharp sound of shattering cut through the silence, making Pauline flinch. Benjamin's stare didn't waver. It was almost defiant. He pulled a pen from his breast pocket and slammed it onto the table. "Just sign it, Mom. One signature, and this will all be over." Pauline lowered her gaze to the pen. That small, ordinary thing suddenly became a symbol of betrayal, as if a single touch would cause everything between them to crumble. Her voice trembled. "You don't have to do this. You can have everything, Benjamin. Just not like this." Benjamin interrupted, his tone flat, merciless. "Everything you ever gave came with conditions. Today, I'm just taking what's already mine." No one spoke after that. The candlelight flickered across Pauline's face, tracing every wrinkle, every tear glistening like glass against the cold metallic sheen of the pen. And in that fleeting moment, she knew with absolute clarity the son she had once loved so fiercely was gone, and in his place stood a stranger wearing Benjamin's face. No one dared to breathe. The room was drowned in a dreadful silence. Only the steady ticking of the clock filled the air, counting down to the moment something would inevitably break. Pauline clutched the paper tightly, her frail hands trembling, the bones in her fingers jutting out like brittle twigs. She looked at the son for whom she had sacrificed everything, and in his eyes she saw a bottomless abyss, not hatred, not sorrow, just emptiness, cold and hollow as if every trace of love that had once bound them had long since drained away. She tried to stand, but her legs quivered violently. She had to steady herself against the edge of the table. "Benjamin," she whispered, her voice pleading. "If you think I've done wrong, I'm sorry, but please don't make me sign this." Benjamin's hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight. His voice dropped low, hoarse, like a hiss forced through his teeth. "You still don't get it, do you? There's no right or wrong anymore. This is my final decision." The words sliced through the air like a blade of ice. Pauline glanced around. The familiar faces surrounding her had turned into strangers, relatives, friends. Everyone lowered their gaze, avoiding her eyes. No one wanted to be part of this tragedy, and in that moment she realized a cruel truth. Even in her own home, she no longer belonged. A gust of wind slipped through the crack of the door, making the candles flicker, their flames trembling as if about to die. Pauline placed the paper down with shaking hands and looked at her son one last time. "Do you know," she said softly, "I used to dream that one day you'd stand here on my birthday and give me a smile, not this." Benjamin closed his eyes. For an instant, something wavered across his face. Hesitation, perhaps remorse, but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by that same ruthless resolve. He pushed the paper toward her again, his voice low but firm. "Sign it. Just one signature. Don't make me do something we'll both regret." Pauline trembled from head to toe. In that moment, she saw herself reflected in her son's eyes, a mirror of all the years of control, protection, love, and guilt intertwined. And she understood. This wasn't just Benjamin's betrayal. It was the final consequence of the way she had loved him too tightly, too fearfully, too wrong. The first tear fell, soaking the corner of the paper. One drop, then another, until her name, Pauline L. Grant blurred into a smear of ink. Her fingers tightened around the pen, but she couldn't move. Her arm was limp, her whole body trembling, her mind spinning in a haze. Sounds faded, the murmurs, the music, the whispers all dissolving into a distant hum. Only Benjamin's voice remained, faint and distorted, echoing from somewhere far away. "Mom, sign it." Pauline lifted her head, meeting his eyes one last time. It was a weary, tear-soaked gaze, resigned, broken. And then she collapsed. Gasps filled the room. The paper slipped from her hand, falling to the floor, half dry, half wet, while the pen rolled away, tapping against the table leg with a hollow clack. The sound marked the end of Pauline's 70th birthday. In the corner of the room, the last candle flickered out, and in that darkness, Benjamin stood still, fists clenched tight, while in his eyes burned a light no longer human, no longer a son's. When Pauline awoke, everything around her was blurred, as if seen through fog. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled the air. The steady beeping of a heart monitor echoed, tick, 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 in quiet rhythm. The ceiling above was sterile white and cold. She was in a hospital. A nurse stepped in softly and said, "You fainted from low blood pressure. You're stable now. Just rest a little longer." Pauline gave a faint nod, but her mind was somewhere else, filled with the image of Benjamin, his eyes, his voice. Then, as if a door in her memory had been opened, she slipped backward in time to the early days of Benjamin's life. More than 40 years ago, Pauline was barely 20 when she gave birth to Benjamin in a small suburban house. Rain poured outside in white sheets. She remembered that night clearly, the first night she held her son. He was tiny, with dusky skin and wide, curious eyes that seemed to look straight into her soul, as if he already understood everything. Pauline had thought then, "As long as my child lives, I can endure anything." Her husband, Harold, was a carpenter, a gentleman, but weak, and often turned to alcohol when life wore him down. The years that followed were a long struggle. Not enough money, a crumbling house, Benjamin often sick, and Pauline working herself to exhaustion, sewing late into the night to earn extra pennies. Sometimes she'd sit by the dim yellow lamp, her face pale from fatigue, stitching clothes while Benjamin slept in a second-hand cradle, his tiny fingers curled tightly around hers. In that moment, every hardship felt worth it. Then Harold left, without a word. One morning, she found only a short note on the table. "I'm sorry. I can't live like this anymore. Take care of our son for me." Pauline sat there for hours, silent, no tears, no sound. Later, she folded the note neatly and placed it in a drawer where it would stay for years, sealed away like a memory she could never throw out. From that day on, she swore Benjamin would never go without again. She took on every job she could find, cleaning houses, washing laundry, selling food on the streets. Every night she returned home exhausted, barely able to kiss her son's forehead before whispering, "I'll never let anyone hurt you, my love." Benjamin grew up in that love, fierce, consuming, and shadowed by fear. Pauline feared losing him, feared the world would hurt him as it had hurt her. So she controlled everything, his friends, his school, what he ate, what he wore, even how long he slept. At first, he obeyed her, gentle and quiet. But as he grew older, his eyes hardened cold and distant, just like the eyes she saw on his birthday. Now, lying in the hospital bed, tears slid silently down Pauline's cheeks. She whispered to the emptiness, as if speaking to time itself. "Was it my love, Benjamin, that turned you into the man you've become?" Outside the hospital window, rain began to fall again, the same rain that had poured the night he was born, and the same rain that fell the night she lost everything. Benjamin was 12 when Pauline finally saved enough money to fix up their old house. She painted the walls herself, nailed each wooden plank, and replaced the windows one by one. That little house was everything she owned, and she believed it would be the place where she and her son would grow old together. Every morning, Pauline woke up early to cook breakfast and check Benjamin's school bag. His shirt pressed smooth, notebooks neatly covered, shoes shining clean. Benjamin was polite, studious, quiet. Everyone who met him would say, "What a good devoted boy." And Pauline believed it so completely that she never noticed how his eyes had begun to avoid hers. As he grew older, Benjamin spoke less. At dinner, he simply nodded, ate quickly, and retreated to his room. When Pauline knocked and asked if something was wrong, he would answer shortly, "I'm just tired, Mom. Don't worry." She would smile, pretending not to feel the unease tightening in her chest. At night, she stayed up sewing clothes by the soft yellow glow of the lamp, glancing through the window to see her son bent over his desk, writing, and she would think, "As long as he succeeds, all of this will be worth it." But Benjamin didn't want the future she had planned. At 16, he said he wanted to study art painting, not business or engineering. Pauline's reaction was instant and sharp. "You'll paint for a living? How will you survive? Do you want people to laugh at me?" Benjamin fell silent, his lips pressed tight, his gaze fixed on the floor. Pauline didn't realize that in that moment, a door between them closed and would never open again. After that, Benjamin began hiding everything from her: his grades, his friends, his drawings made late at night, even his first outings with classmates. One day, while doing laundry, Pauline found a sketch folded in his jacket pocket, a drawing of her sewing by the window, and underneath it, in small letters, "She loves me too tightly." Her hands went numb. Somehow those 5 words hurt more than any accusation ever could. That night, when Benjamin came home, she said nothing. She quietly burned the drawing in the sink, watching the smoke curl upward in silence. She didn't know why she did it, only that seeing those words had made her feel betrayed. After that, Benjamin grew even more distant. He started attending extra classes without telling her, coming home late, sometimes not at all. Pauline searched for him everywhere, calling friends, visiting his school, even contacting the police after one sleepless night. When he finally came home, she broke down in tears, relieved, furious, terrified all at once. "I thought something happened to you. Do you have any idea how scared I was?" Benjamin looked at her, his voice low and cold. "I'm scared of you too, Mom. Did you know that?" The words tore through the room like thunder. Pauline froze. She couldn't understand how could her son fear her. What had she done wrong? But deep inside, a small voice whispered, "Because you never let him breathe." Years passed. Benjamin was accepted into a university far from home. Pauline was proud, but also frightened. She spent a week preparing his things, cooking his favorite meals, trying to make the departure perfect. When the day came, Benjamin hugged her before leaving, but he didn't look her in the eye. Pauline stood there, watching the bus disappear down the street until it was gone behind the buildings. She didn't know it then, but that was the last time Benjamin ever held her, with the full, unguarded love of a son. In her hospital bed, Pauline clutched the blanket tightly, tears streaming down her face. Every memory, every word, every choice returned to her sharp, merciless, undeniable. "You were never the stranger, Benjamin," she whispered. "It was me. I was the one who pushed you away." 3 years after Benjamin left home, Pauline still kept the habit of making an extra cup of tea every evening, placing it across the dining table, the empty seat reserved for her son. Each night she looked at that chair, imagining Benjamin walking through the door, smiling as he said, "Mom, I'm home." But the chair remained empty. Letters came less often. Calls became shorter, emptier. Pauline tried to convince herself that he was just busy, that her son was growing up, that every child eventually drifts away from their mother's embrace. But deep inside, she felt it, that quiet coldness, that invisible distance stretching farther and farther with each passing day. Then one day, Benjamin called. His voice was different, lower, confident, and strangely unfamiliar. "I'll be visiting this weekend," he said. "Make your beef stew, okay? I miss it." Pauline nearly burst into tears from joy. All week she cleaned the house, bought flowers, and rehung their old photo together. Every corner shone as if awaiting something sacred. When Benjamin arrived, a silver car stopped at the gate. He stepped out, crisp shirt, polished shoes, the picture of a young, successful man, far removed from the struggling student she once knew. Pauline threw her arms around him, tears soaking his shoulder. But Benjamin only patted her back lightly, smiling a perfect, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You look well, Mom." "I'm glad." "You're home, Benjamin." "That's all I need to feel well," she said, smiling through the strange ache in her chest. Her son spoke like a guest now. His eyes, once full of warmth, held only distance. That evening over dinner, Benjamin talked about his work and investment firm, a new branch opening soon, a promising future. Pauline listened, proud but uneasy. He spoke of money, contracts, opportunities, each word clicking like the cold tick of a clock. When she finally asked, "Do you have someone special yet?" Benjamin smiled. "There's someone. I think you'll like her." Something in that smile made Pauline's breath catch. There was light in his eyes, but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. Later that night, after Benjamin had gone to bed, Pauline was tidying up when a piece of paper slipped out of his leather briefcase. It was a small document printed with a bank's logo. The heading read, "Application for Property Collateral Approval." She didn't fully understand what it meant, but something inside her tightened. Her instincts whispered that it wasn't just business paperwork. A flicker of fear passed through her, but she quickly dismissed it. "No, Benjamin would never do anything to hurt me. He's just trying to help." Still, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Benjamin's smile, warm yet distant, concealing something beneath its calm surface. What she didn't know was that night marked the beginning of a long descent, days filled with unease, suspicion, and the quiet dread of something coming undone. The next morning, Benjamin left early. On the dining table, he'd placed a handwritten note. "I'll be back soon, Mom. Trust me." Pauline read it over and over, her hands trembling. The word trust stung her chest because she knew that when someone tells you to trust them, it's usually the moment they've started hiding something. And that summer, Benjamin came home again, but this time, he wasn't alone. With him was a young woman, her skin a soft bronze, her frame elegant, her red lips curved in a smile that seemed to dare the world itself. She introduced herself brightly. "I'm Mia, Benjamin's girlfriend." Pauline returned the smile politely, but in that very moment, a chill swept through her heart. That smile was too perfect, too deliberate. Mia was charming, quick, graceful, endlessly polite. She helped Pauline set the table, poured tea, and spoke warmly about Benjamin's work, with just the right touch of pride and self-importance. Benjamin sat beside her, eyes fixed on Mia as if nothing else existed. For the first time, Pauline saw that her son's gaze no longer belonged to her. That evening, while they cleaned up after dinner, Mia looked around and said, "This house is beautiful, it feels so warm." Pauline smiled. "This house is my whole life. Every brick, every wall, I built with my own hands." Mia's lips curved faintly. "Then Benjamin's very lucky," she said softly. "Maybe someday he'll want to take care of this house in his own way." The words sounded harmless, but Pauline froze. A shiver crept down her spine, because the way Mia said "take care" sounded a lot like "take over." She forced a smile, saying nothing. That night, Pauline couldn't sleep. From the next room came the sound of laughter, Benjamin and Mia whispering, talking softly. Each laugh cut into her chest, not out of jealousy, but but fear that someday her son's love would no longer have a place for her. She closed her eyes, but behind her lids, Mia's smile lingered, spreading slowly, like an oil stain in the dark. Months later, Benjamin announced that he and Mia were getting married. Pauline smiled, offered congratulations, but her eyes shimmered with tears. "Are you sure, Benjamin?" "You haven't known her that long." Benjamin placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "I know what I'm doing, Mom. Mia understands me better than anyone." Pauline swallowed her worry and nodded. She had promised herself she would never interfere again. But deep down, the old fear returned, the fear of losing her son. Not this time to fate, but to a woman she didn't understand. The wedding was small, modern, nothing like Pauline's style. She wore a simple dress and sat quietly in the front row, watching Benjamin hold Mia's hands as they recited their vows. Applause filled the hall, petals fluttered through the air, but only Pauline felt the silent crack forming deep inside her chest. She tried to smile, but when Mia's eyes met hers, that smile faltered. There was something in the young woman's gaze, not joy, but triumph. That night, after all the guests had gone, Pauline approached to offer her blessings. Mia clasped her hand, tilted her head, and said sweetly, "I promise I'll take care of him, and this house, just like you always did." The words made Pauline freeze. She didn't know why her heart began pounding so hard, but something in that promise sounded like a warning. She only nodded, smiling faintly, wearily. But inside, a strange certainty took root. This woman hadn't come to build, she had come to claim. Years later, lying in her hospital bed, Pauline closed her eyes. Mia's voice still echoed in her mind, like a prophecy that had never been wrong. "I'll take care of this house." And now, as the house no longer belonged to her, Pauline finally understood the prophecy had come true. After the wedding, Benjamin rarely called his mother. Their conversations were brief about work, polite check-ins, nothing more. Pauline tried to sound cheerful, but each time she hung up, she would sit for hours by the wooden chair near the window, staring out at the empty road, the same spot where she used to wait for her son to come home every evening. Mia visited occasionally, never alone. She always came with Benjamin, bringing expensive gifts, a bottle of wine, a silk scarf, a fancy cake. Pauline didn't need any of it, but she always said, "Thank you." Mia's words were sweet, her smile gracious, yet in her eyes Pauline caught something else, a quiet calculation, as though she were measuring the worth of every item, every wall, every brick of the house. Then Benjamin began saying things that unsettled her. One evening he said, "Mom, I think you should move closer to me, somewhere downtown. This place is too far, too inconvenient." Pauline smiled. "But I'm used to it here, Benjamin. This house. It's my whole life." He hesitated, then replied, his tone gentle but firm. "You can't stay here forever, Mom. You should think about the future." The words pierced her like a pin to the heart. She wasn't angry, just sad, because in his voice she no longer heard love, only strategy. From then on, every visit seemed to circle back to the house. Benjamin talked about insurance, about transferring papers for safety, about temporary ownership for convenience with the bank. Each time Pauline smiled and deflected, but after he left, she would sit staring at the stack of documents on the table, feeling that invisible fear creeping deeper each day. And then, one afternoon, Benjamin arrived with Mia again, both dressed neatly, serious expressions on their faces. He placed a folder in front of her and said firmly, "Mom, I just need you to sign a few administrative papers. Nothing serious, just banking formalities." Pauline hesitated. "Can you explain them to me first, dear?" Before he could answer, Mia leaned in, her tone soft as silk. "Oh, don't worry, Mom. I've checked everything. It's just a loan guarantee for Benjamin's investment. Once the project is finished, I'll pay it back myself." The words loan guarantee made Pauline's stomach drop. She flipped through the pages, her eyes catching on the line, property used as collateral. Her heart clenched. Benjamin, you're using this house as collateral? Benjamin looked away, his voice quiet. It's only temporary, Mom. I just need some capital to invest. I'll pay it off as soon as I make a return. Pauline sat motionless, her trembling hand resting on the edge of the document. She wanted to believe him. She truly did. But deep inside, a dark certainty began to take root that from this moment on, the house would never truly be hers again. That night, after Benjamin and Mia left, Pauline sat alone in the silent room. She looked around the photo of her and Benjamin at his graduation, Harold's old wooden chair, the chipped flower vase. Everything carried the scent of the past, of love, of struggle, of the life she had built piece by piece, and now all of it was slipping away. She whispered softly into the empty room, "If you ever come back, my son, please, don't let me fail to recognize you." Outside, the wind picked up, tugging at the curtains. The shadow of an old woman swayed against the wall, the shadow of a mother slowly losing everything, including the child she had once lived her whole life for. 2 weeks had passed since the terrible birthday, and Pauline still hadn't fully recovered. The house was unnervingly quiet. The tablecloth still bore the wax stains from that night, and the remains of the birthday cake sat hardened on its plate. Every corner of the house felt cold, as if that night had never really ended, only paused, waiting to begin again. One morning, while Pauline was watering the plants on the porch, a black car pulled up in front of the gate. Benjamin stepped out, gray suit, polished shoes, accompanied by a man she didn't recognize, tall, wearing glasses, briefcase in hand. Pauline froze. Her heart pounded violently. Her instincts told her this was not a visit out of love. Benjamin gave a faint, almost formal smile. His voice was calm but distant. "Mom, I'd like you to meet Mr. Smith, my attorney." The man nodded politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Grant. I'm here to clarify a few minor matters regarding property and documentation." Pauline's hand trembled. The watering can tipped, water spilling onto the tiles. She steadied her breath. "What matters? I thought we'd already discussed everything." Benjamin's smile barely changed. "No, Mom. You didn't sign that day. We need to finalize this. I don't want things to go any further." "Go any further?" The phrase sliced through the air like a blade of ice. Pauline's eyes searched her son's face. "You mean court?" she whispered. Benjamin didn't answer. He simply adjusted his tie, his expression cold, professional. Mr. Smith spoke gently. "We only wish to handle this smoothly and within the law. If you agree to sign the transfer, everything will be settled peacefully." Pauline stood there, unable to comprehend what she was hearing. Law. Transfer. When had those words, those cold, distant words, become part of the conversation between mother and son? Her voice broke. "Benjamin, are you really going to take your mother to court?" He looked up at her, eyes hollow. "I just want what rightfully belongs to me, Mom." For a moment, her knees nearly gave out. "What rightfully belongs to me?" The words echoed through her head, unraveling years of memories, meals shared, cold nights endured together, the warmth of his arms as a child. All of it gone, leaving only the cruel present, her son standing beside a lawyer. She sank into the old wooden chair, fingers gripping the table's edge for strength. Her voice quivered, yet her eyes were still soft, searching for some fragment of the boy she once knew. "Benjamin, look at me. This isn't how you used to speak to your mother." Benjamin tightened his grip on the briefcase, his jaw hardening. "Things have changed, Mom. I'm not the little boy in this house anymore. I need to move forward, and this house is my first step." Pauline said nothing. A gentle breeze drifted in, carrying the faint scent of pine from the back garden. And in that moment, she understood the house now stood on the edge of a war. And this time, her enemy wasn't a stranger. It was her own son. Benjamin and the lawyer stepped into the house. The familiar living room suddenly felt different, no longer a warm, comforting space, but a quiet courtroom where the bond between mother and son was about to be weighed and measured in legal terms. Pauline sat across from her son, her frail hands clasped tightly together, eyes fixed on the cracked tile beneath her feet. Benjamin opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. The soft rustle of pages filled the air, each turn slicing through the silence like a blade. "These are all the documents concerning the property," he said evenly, his tone detached, professional. "I just need your signature to finalize the transfer. Everything's prepared." Pauline lifted her head, her voice trembling. "Benjamin, look around you. Everything in this house, the walls, the windows, every brick you grew up surrounded by them. I worked night after night to pay off our debts, so you could have this home, this roof over your head. Have you really forgotten?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. He looked toward the window, avoiding her eyes. "I haven't forgotten, Mom. But the past can't sustain the future. I need to be practical." Pauline let out a fragile laugh, full of despair. "Practical? What does that mean? Selling this house for money?" Benjamin didn't answer. The lawyer cleared his throat gently, stepping in. "Mrs. Grant, Benjamin only wishes to utilize the property's value for investment purposes. He's pursuing a project very promising, very secure. The house can always be repurchased later." Pauline turned to her son, eyes full of disbelief and pain. "What kind of project needs you to risk our home, Benjamin?" He sighed, voice low but resolute. "I'm investing in Mia's company. She has vision. She has connections. This is a major opportunity." At that name, Mia Pauline's chest constricted, as though something inside her cracked. Mia, always Mia. The young woman who had unsettled her from the very beginning, now she was at the heart of it all. "She told you to do this, didn't she?" Pauline whispered. Benjamin's eyes flashed with anger. "Don't talk like she's manipulating me. This is my decision, Mom. Mine. I'm not a child anymore. I have the right to make choices." "Right?" Pauline echoed, her voice shaking. "The right to take away the only thing I have left. The right to turn this house, the one your father built, the place where you took your first breath, into collateral for a loan?" Benjamin slammed the folder onto the table, his voice sharp, breaking. "Enough, Mom. You always say everything's for me, for the family. But did you ever stop to think about what I want? You've controlled my life from the start, and now you want to control my future too?" Pauline froze. The words weren't just anger. They were the eruption of years of pain, resentment, and misunderstanding. She opened her mouth, but her voice caught in her throat. "So that's what you think? That all I ever wanted was to control you?" Benjamin gave a bitter laugh, his eyes red but cold. "If that's not it, then why have I never felt free?" Silence settled heavily over the room. Even the lawyer stood motionless, unwilling to intervene. Pauline looked at her son, the only person she had ever truly lived for, and realized, for the first time, that her love had become a prison. She whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "So, everything I did only made you feel trapped?" Benjamin turned away, saying nothing. A tear slipped down Pauline's cheek and fell onto the document, the property title transfer, spreading into a small, blurred stain. No one spoke again. The house sank back into an unbearable stillness, broken only by the steady ticking of the clock, counting down the final seconds before a mother's love shattered beyond repair. After Benjamin left, the house sank into a silence so heavy it seemed to press against the walls. The transfer document still lay on the table, streaked with dried tears, its edges curled. Pauline sat there for a long time, unmoving, until the afternoon light slid through the window, painting her face in a weary shade of orange. She understood then if she kept quiet, she would lose everything, not just the house, but the final piece of her life. Slowly she stood up, picked up the paper, folded it neatly, and tucked it into a drawer. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were different now. For the first time in years, they held not just grief, but resolve. That evening, she went to see Esther, her closest neighbor, a widow a few years older, who had witnessed every rise and fall in Pauline's life. When Pauline told her everything, Esther slammed her hand on the table. "My God, Pauline, what's that boy thinking? How could your own son force you to sign something like that?" Pauline pressed her lips together, her voice quiet but firm. "I don't know. It's like he isn't Benjamin anymore. That look in his eyes, it was so cold, Esther, like he was looking at a stranger." Esther sighed, taking Pauline's hand. "You can't just sit back anymore. Yesterday I saw Mia at the bank with him. They looked busy, serious. You should check right away." The next morning, Pauline went to the bank, cautiously asking about her records. The clerk typed on the computer, then hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. There's a copy of your property title that's been submitted. It lists you and Mr. Benjamin Grant as co-owners, but the file is pending. It's missing a second signature." Pauline's stomach turned to ice. The second signature hers. Just one mark of a pen, and everything would be gone. She walked out into the street, sunlight glinting off her wrinkled face, but her eyes were clear, steady. She knew, if Benjamin continued, everything Harold had built, every drop of sweat she had shed would vanish. And for the first time in her life, Pauline swore she would fight. That afternoon, Benjamin came by, this time alone. He expected the same fragile mother, the same silence, but when he entered the living room, he stopped in his tracks. Pauline sat upright, calm, composed. No tears, no shaking. "I went to the bank," she said evenly. "I know what you're doing." Benjamin froze. "You went there?" "Yes, and I've also spoken with my own lawyer. From now on, everything will go through legal channels my way." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was solid like stone. Benjamin stood still, taken aback. He hadn't expected this woman who had always endured, always yielded, now meeting his gaze without flinching. He inhaled sharply, his tone hardening. "So you're declaring war on me, then?" Pauline's answer came slow, steady, and cuttingly clear. "No, I'm defending what's right. And if that means standing against you, then so be it." The words stunned Benjamin into silence. The air between them tightened, taut as a wire about to snap. Outside, the wind howled against the window, branches scraping like the restless beat of two breaking hearts, two souls who had once been everything to each other. When Benjamin left, Pauline remained by the window. She knew the real battle was only beginning, but for the first time in years, she no longer felt afraid. "If you want to take everything from me," she whispered, "then you'll have to go through me first." One late afternoon at the end of the month, as the sun slanted across the front yard, Pauline was pulling weeds in the garden when she heard the sound of a car stopping at the gate. The door opened, and that familiar voice rang out sweet as sugar, cold as steel. "Hello, Mother. It's been a while." Pauline straightened, her heart tightening. Mia, dressed in a sleek black dress, sunglasses shading her eyes, smiled as if nothing had ever happened. In her hand was a small gift bag wrapped in glossy paper. She walked right up to the porch, set the bag on the table. "I brought some pastries for you. I remember you like orange flavor." Pauline looked at the bag, then at the woman. The sunlight hit Mia's face, casting sharp glints across her red lips and the dark lenses that hid her eyes. It was less a face than a perfect mask. Pauline didn't invite her in. Her voice was calm but wary. You came because of Benjamin? Mia smiled. I came to help him, and you too, if you'll let me. She sat down, crossed her legs gracefully, and spoke in a tone that was calm, polite, yet every word sliced like a thin, precise blade. Benjamin's under a lot of pressure. Everything he's doing for your future, you know. But if you insist on holding on to this house, you'll leave him no choice. Pauline's fingers clenched. Her voice trembled, thick with anger. Are you threatening me, Mia? No, Mia replied smoothly, her smile unshaken. I'm just telling the truth. She reached into her bag and drew out a thin folder, sliding it across the table. This is a copy of the contract Benjamin prepared. The house is necessary collateral for his company's continuation. If you sign, you'll receive a guaranteed monthly pension. Pauline didn't touch it. She only stared at the young woman, her voice breaking. I don't want your money. I just want my son back the way he used to be. Mia tilted her head, her smile fading to a shadow. The way he used to be. You don't understand, Mrs. Grant. People change. He's simply becoming who he was meant to be, someone no longer bound by the past. No longer bound. The phrase stung like a needle under the skin. Pauline looked into Mia's eyes, and in that moment, she saw what her heart had feared all along. This woman didn't just want the house, she wanted to erase Pauline from Benjamin's life entirely. What is it you really want, Mia? Pauline asked quietly. Mia's lips curved again, sharp and deliberate. Ownership, the house, and your silence. A cold wave swept through Pauline's body. She understood then this wasn't a family matter anymore. It was a takeover, carefully planned, and her son, her only son, was being used as a pawn. Mia rose, smoothed her dress, and leaned close to whisper in Pauline's ear, her voice soft as a breath, but venomous. If you don't sign, you'll destroy him completely, and I won't be the one to blame. Then she turned and left, her expensive perfume hanging in the air, sweet, heavy, suffocating. Pauline stood frozen, her hands gripping each other so tightly that her knuckles bled. The last rays of sunlight streamed through the window, lighting her face, the face of a mother losing her son not to fate, but to someone else's hands. That night, Pauline called Esther. Her voice was hoarse with exhaustion. Esther, I think I know who's behind all of this. Who? Not Benjamin. It's her, his wife. She's the one pulling the strings, controlling everything, even him. Her voice broke. On the other end, Esther was silent for a long moment before she spoke softly. Then you'd better be ready, Pauline, because she won't stop. And Pauline understood this was no longer just a battle between mother and son. It had become a war, a quiet, merciless war between an aging mother and a young, ambitious woman, where the prize at stake was not just a house, but Benjamin's very heart. After her meeting with Mia, Pauline barely slept for 3 nights. Every time she closed her eyes, that syrupy voice echoed in her mind. If you don't sign, you'll destroy him. Each word dripped like acid, searing deeper into her thoughts. She knew if Mia had dared to speak that boldly, there was something darker behind it. So Pauline began to investigate quietly, carefully. And then, one Friday morning, while tidying the living room, she noticed a white envelope that had slipped behind the wooden shelf where Benjamin used to keep his files. Inside were a bank statement and several faded contract pages stamped in red. At the top, the words jumped out at her. Primary collateral, 45 Mayflower Street. Owner, Pauline L. Grant. Beneath it, Benjamin's signature. Strong, sharp, confident, no hesitation. Pauline froze. The paper trembled in her hands. Her breath caught in her throat. It was no longer suspicion, it was proof. Benjamin had filed a mortgage using her name, her house, without consent. A crime wrapped in legality, a knife sheathed in paper. She sank into the nearest chair, dizzy. Memories flooded in Benjamin smiling at her over dinner after his wedding. His gentle words, "I just want you to be safe." The pen he'd placed before her on her birthday. Now, all of it unraveled, each memory a carefully placed lie. Pauline buried her face in her hands as tears spilled down, not from heartbreak this time, but from betrayal that reached the very mind. He hadn't just exploited her love, he'd weaponized her trust, the one thing she'd guarded like a treasure. That night, Pauline went to Esther's house. She spread the documents across the table, her hands trembling. "Look at this," she whispered. "He used my name, Esther. He even signed the papers." Esther picked them up, her face blanching. "This signature, it's forged, but it's clever. Most people wouldn't notice." Pauline nodded, her lips pale. "What do I do now? I can't let him destroy everything." Esther met her eyes, voice firm. "You need a lawyer, right away, and you need to confront Benjamin. You can't let that woman control everything." Pauline was silent for a long time, then softly, "I'm afraid. If I fight him, I'll lose him forever." Esther's tone softened, but her words struck hard. "Are you sure you haven't already lost him, Pauline?" The room fell silent. Pauline lowered her head. Inside her, two forces tore at each other, reason urging her to protect the house, and a mother's heart still desperate to protect her son. But now, with the evidence before her, she knew blind love could kill the mother inside her just as surely as hatred could. That night, she sat alone in the dark, the yellow lamp casting its glow over the bank statement.